Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Get Healthy Tampa Bay podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kerry Reller, and today we have a very special guest, Dr. Jennifer Butler. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about, everything that you're doing. But first, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and a brief introduction of what you do and then how you got into that?
Sure. So I am a physician slash wife slash mother slash puppy mom. Yes, so many of us are multi-hyphenated, but I am the owner and physician for House Concierge MD. It is a mobile concierge medicine service that provides house calls and telemedicine for in-home primary care throughout Central Florida. And of course, telemedicine is throughout the entire state of Florida. So it's definitely a new wave of providing care for people.
Yeah, absolutely. What I thought was interesting reading a little bit about how you got to this point was all the different, I guess, accolades and studying that you've done. So, I guess, can you tell us a little bit about that and then kind of how you got into this, I guess, mobile concierge primary care role as well? Because you've done a lot more than that, right?
Yeah, so I have always been fascinated by the human body and how it works. And when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life in college, I knew I loved science. I knew I loved physiology, but I also knew I loved working with people and wanting to be involved in an area of service. And so medicine just seemed like the natural fit for me. As a result, I ended up finishing a degree in biology at Tuskegee in Alabama, and then went on to Detroit, Michigan for medical school. And at the time, I was thinking, what's the adrenaline rush, most exciting thing I can do in medicine? Because I love things like roller coasters and things like that. And so, doing an ICU rotation was just awe-inspiring for me. I thought it was absolutely amazing. I thought people were so fun, so smart. And the patients were incredibly complex and interesting and so
Mhm.
grateful and inspiring when you got them through such a high acuity and sick time of their lives. So as a result, I ended up doing internal medicine as a residency in New York, and then went on to do a critical care fellowship back in Detroit, and then also did a sleep medicine fellowship as well in Chicago. But all of that landed me in Atlanta because I got tired of the snow. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I refuse to continue to dig my car out in the morning to get to shifts at work at the hospital. So I took a job in Atlanta and I was there for many years. Absolutely love the people there. Still have a lot of great friends at that healthcare system. But then when my husband's job called him to transition to the state of Florida, we moved down to the Orlando area. And so I pivoted to why I went into medicine in the first place. People connections, loving the science, loving to be of service. And this model of healthcare it's not big box medicine. It's the complete opposite of that. It is incredibly personalized, tailored to what people actually need. And I get what I was missing in big box medicine, which is that one-on-one relationship with people, because
Mhm.
now we just have more time, more attention, more focus on what the actual issues are on the ground.
Yeah, that's so it's so nice and I guess interesting too. One, I also am not a big fan of the cold and I studied up north a little bit and then finally got back home in I guess 2016 where it's warmer. So I'm happy about that. But then also
Mhm.
I noticed that you had done this ICU, like pulmonary critical care is, not really a one-on-one thing. Like usually the patient's intubated and stuff. So you're not really having that
Mhm.
interaction. So I was interested to see how you kind of did full circle. So is your husband in healthcare too, or in
No,
something? Okay.
he's an engineer. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
a
Okay.
proud
So
engineer,
a what? A,
a proud
a
engineer.
proud engineer. Very nice. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So basically now you've got this opportunity when you move to Orlando to kind of reinvent and get back to what
Mhm.
your real passions are. So why did you decide to make like this mobile medicine and concierge practice?
Yeah, the one complaint that I've always heard from patients, regardless of what part of the country I've lived in, is this issue around access
Mhm.
to care. And for a variety of different reasons, a lot of people, whether they are the elderly or just very busy with their work or career, they
Mhm.
struggle with getting their healthcare needs met in a timely fashion. and in an accessible fashion or in a way that's convenient for them. And so oftentimes we would see people back into the hospital and in the ICU for various chronic disease states like diabetes, heart failure, COPD. And a lot of it had to do with their inability to just get what they needed from the system. And so,
Hmm.
in this issue of addressing access and equity, came kind of this drive of why don't we be as mobile as possible? I mean, if Uber can do it with food, why can't we do it with healthcare and bring all the resources that someone would normally get in a clinic visit to their home? And so that's exactly what our model is all about. We bring everything that you would get in a brick and mortar primary care clinic to your house so that you can stay on top of your preventative screening, so that if you have chronic diseases like diabetes, we can manage you appropriately, closely, and make sure that you're staying on track.
So one of the things that I actually enjoyed in our residency program was like the home visits, but I didn't really understand how that would operate in a model of, I guess, traditional insurance and everything, because it's not easy to do that. And doctors don't go in the hospital as much. They aren't doing those kind of visits anymore as they did traditionally. But it's interesting because obviously telemedicine is very big and you can offer that, of course, but you're actually going into their homes and doing like pretty much everything that we could do in the office, which is really cool. And then, so how does that work with like payment or an insurance? Like, is this an insurance based model or is it all going to be concierge?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the way we work is that we can work with any insurance plan and people can use that plan to pay for any of their medical services, labs, imaging, things like that. But their relationship with the doctor is a direct pay fee or a cash pay fee. So
Mhm.
we run subscription or membership model. All of our patients are members of the practice. They pay a monthly fee, a flat rate. So there's no surprises. There are no
Right.
surprise billings after you see us. And that's how we operate. And so you have unlimited phone calls, text messages, emails to reach me as your doctor. And then, of course, we do our in-house visits quarterly or more frequently, just depending upon what the need is. But it is a great way to make sure that people are getting care and meeting people where they're at. That's, I think, been the challenge sometimes. I think in big box medicine is that we've kind of created these monstrous buildings, if you will, and they're pretty, don't get me wrong, but that doesn't always necessarily work for everybody. And so for the people out there who have so many commitments, whether it's work wise or they have barriers, whether it's transportation or mobility, this model just works for them.
Do you find that you get a lot of patients that have those like transportation and mobility problems as well?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's across the spectrum. And so I've engaged with patients who maybe they've had a stroke and that ability
Mhm.
to walk and get out of the house is difficult. Sometimes people have things like dementia going on and they're afraid to be able to try and drive. But then a lot of people who are caregivers for aging parents or an aging spouse, this works for them really well, that to know that the doctor's coming to them and they don't have to try and get off work to take their loved one to the doctor. And then, of course, busy professionals like ourselves. I mean, I think we can say that people in the healthcare industry, we're probably the worst patients because we are constantly giving and giving and giving of ourselves, but it's very rare that we sometimes are taking care of ourselves. We put our health on the back burner. So I do have a number of physicians and nurses who are like, this is great because you're flexible and it works for my schedule.
Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
a bad patient. I admit it. I even was telling my dermatologist that today. I'm like, yeah, yes, I'm a bad patient. But I didn't think about that role with the caregivers. That's really nice to do that. Like, I think there's a lot of people who have some sort of medical issue that isn't allowing them out of the home. And it so creates a big burden on the family sometimes. And some may even have like around the clock care that they have at the home, but they don't have the ability, like you said, to leave their employment and go take them to the doctor. So that's a really nice role that can kind of fill that gap in need. I think that's important.
Yeah, I think especially what I love about the state of Florida is there's a big push for people to age in place if they can, but providing as many resources to our seniors as possible.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of seniors recognize that they're aging, recognizing that they may have limitations physically, but they want to maintain some degree of dignity and independence. And so, whatever we can do to kind of continue to facilitate that, it's a great way to be a part of their care team. And at
Mhm.
providing caregivers, especially those of us who are millennials or a little older who are taking care of aging parents, this is such a big support because caregiver burnout is huge, very huge, that
Mhm.
I think sometimes we don't talk enough about.
Yeah. So walk me through like a typical visit that you might do in someone's home. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I love that question. So typically, what we do is once someone's reached out and expressed interest in becoming a member of the practice, have a brief conversation, consultation, like over Zoom or by phone, just to make sure that we're aligned and we can meet their needs and what they're looking for. And then we set up an appointment, usually within 24 to 48 hours. I come to the home and I bring all the equipment that I need to do a full evaluation. So we have a pretty extensive conversation that lasts about 30 minutes. And then the exam itself is probably an additional 30 minutes. And then we can do blood work in real time. We can do diagnostics like EKGs in real time as well. But we have a full assessment that lasts anywhere between 60 to 90 minutes about not only what's going on with you current state, but what are your future health goals over the next 5 years? Like, where do you want to be? Which I think is, important because it kind of lays the roadmap and the foundation of where we're going. I'm a partner in my patient's healthcare journey. I'm in the passenger seat navigating, but they're the driver ultimately. And so we all need to be on the same page about what's the final destination looking like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's nice that you have that time and the ability, and that's one of the benefits of this membership model, right? You get that time that you can use to have those conversations for preventative and for what their future outlook is. So that's really nice. How can you make sure that they're getting like the most efficient care in this visit?
Yeah, I think, we're pretty structured in how we're approaching what the need is for each patient. I think that's probably why it's so critical that we do the consultation up front, which is always free of charge. It's just a conversation, what have you been doing? What's been working? What's not been working? And then what do we need to try and achieve within the first 30 days? And so that initial evaluation is extended, but it's good because we have to make sure that we're on the same page because it doesn't make sense as your doctor to sit here and list a bunch of medications and procedures and testing that you're not on the same page about at all.
Mhm.
And so I think from that standpoint, that initial visit is critical. But I think going on throughout the rest of the year, the great thing about this service model is that all of our patients have my cell phone number. And so they can always text me in real time or video chat me in real time about what's going on with them so we can address their needs on demand, which is, ideal. And like I said, I feel like if Uber can do this with food, we can do this with healthcare.
Yeah. How
Hmm.
about like acute needs? How does that work in your model?
Yeah. So typically anything that's life-threatening is going to the hospital. We're giving that back to them. But things like colds, flus, testing, usually our patients just let us know, hey, I'm not feeling well. I'm concerned that maybe I may have been exposed to COVID or the flu. And we come by and do our swabbing in home and then send it to the lab and see what those results look like. And so either that's a house call visit within 24 hours or a telemedicine visit.
Hmm. And you
Mhm.
utilize standard labs like LabCorp Quest and things like
Quest
that.
diagnostics,
And
exactly. Hmm.
and they're able to kind of bill that to the insurance as well, like you mentioned, right? Okay, well,
Exactly.
that's good. You mentioned telemedicine already. How do you utilize that a little more?
Yeah, so we are able to expound on, not just primary care in the telemedicine world, but a little bit more of the acute, low acuity urgent care needs, and then also even more on the wellness platform. So we talk a lot about weight
Mhm.
loss and then also sleep. And so it's great to be able to reach out to people throughout the entire state of Florida, not just the Orlando or Tampa Bay region in this
Mhm.
telemedicine format. I feel like telemedicine really aggressively grew during COVID. People
Yeah.
had to do it, but I feel like it's here to stay because it's just so much more convenient.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like it makes so much more sense too from the provider and the patient standpoint. Like they have a quick question, great, let's hop on a visit. And one, I get reimbursed for my time, which is important too, so I can stay open, but also so that they get their needs addressed quicker as well.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
and more conveniently, they could do it on a lunch break or something like that as well, or just a quick step out of the office rather than drive in and drive out. So it's definitely telemedicine, I think, is here to stay. And
Yeah.
hopefully the insurances agree because they're kind of the holdup on some things. But that's great. I thought I was giggling because I'm like, when are you going to bring in sleep to your practice since you did an entire fellowship in that? So I mean, I just had a whole episode on sleep, but you do coach people and help them improve that because it's clearly related to many, many things.
Oh yeah, I feel like sleep is like the last frontier. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
newer kid on the block when it comes to medicine, and often it's undervalued and underrated, but it impacts everything of your life. And sleep is always built into our wellness plan. I mean, we always address what's going on with people's sleep patterns and habits, their hygiene. Are there any underlying sleep disorders like sleep apnea or insomnia that we need to address? But then also your stress management, like what's going on with that, because that also causes a ton of inflammation in the body and impacts everything that's going on with you. And so we try to incorporate those elements in all of our wellness plans for our patients.
And are you the one that's mostly managing all that, or do you have extra helpers and staff for that?
Yeah, so I am the solo practitioner. So you always see me, the doctor, but I do have a medical assistant, Nikki. She's fabulous. And then Felicia is our concierge nurse, and she's amazing with care coordination.
Do they travel with you to the home, or do one of them?
So it's always me. Yeah, there's no entourage coming to the house.
Yeah. Do
But
you have a physical location?
no, so I
Okay.
am, yeah, we are 100% mobile. So I'm always in my car and then I'm on the road.
And how do you manage such a large territory?
Yeah,
Orlando to Tampa and some other counties were mentioned as well.
yeah, it's a great question. It's interesting. Distance and traffic is relative if you've just left Atlanta, because
Yeah.
I feel like the average person in Atlanta easily spends over an hour, maybe hour and 30 commuting from home to work. And so the distance from Orlando to a Tampa is like an hour and a half, just like not too far off from what the Atlanta drive used to be. But typically we try to have certain days dedicated towards our Orlando days and certain days dedicated towards our Tampa days. Hmm.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
good to know. I
Yeah.
don't know how
Yeah.
you would manage that. Yeah. So I guess I'm assuming you use an electronic medical record, but how do you maintain like patient records and make sure like working with their, I guess if they have any specialists, how did that come into play?
Yeah. So we do use an electronic medical record system to maintain all of the information that we garner from our patient visits, keeps track of their lab information, imaging studies. And then we try to make sure that we have a collaborative understanding of all the specialists that they're seeing. And then we always reach out to the specialists that they're seeing so they're aware we're part of their care, we're coordinating some things. This is where we're at with the things that we've discovered, the milestones we've achieved, and what additional assistance or support we're looking for depending on each patient's case. Because ideally, I mean, we should all be kind of like each patient's board of directors, if you will,
Yeah.
in trying to help them achieve their health goals. And so our major point of creating a smaller practice, a micro practice, if you will, that's a lot more personalized is that care is just a lot more seamless to
Mhm.
coordinate. And it makes for a lot more effective relationships with everybody.
Well, those are definitely rewards of the practice. Are there any challenges that you encounter in this model?
I think it's new. The newness of
Yeah.
it, the novelty of subscription or membership medicine is something that a lot of people in different parts of the country are just getting used to. And so there's definitely a huge educational component and awareness component often happens when you meet people and they're like, well, you're a concierge doctor. What is that? you know. And I think that's different than when you say you're a doctor that works at hospital X. Like people get it immediately. So I think that is probably the biggest challenge of just increasing awareness, education, and people being comfortable with something that's different.
How do
Hmm.
you see this model like evolving over the next decade or so?
So I think that mobile medicine, whether it's full on concierge, full on other names like direct primary care, it's a grassroots movement that is just continuing to grow. I
Hmm.
think when you look at the numbers of practices like this, probably 10 years ago, maybe it was in the hundreds, now it's in the thousands. And it just only continues to grow because I think people recognize that, at least from the primary care model, this is an alternative that checks all the boxes for both patient and clinician satisfaction. And most people, once they start the model, they love it. They
Hmm.
absolutely love it. And it's difficult for them to fathom going back into, a traditional model for them. I don't think this model is for everyone, but I think for the people that really need it, this really works.
And do you go to more than just their homes, like say they're at work or wherever they are? Is
Yeah,
that...
our motto is meeting the patient where they're at. So if their employer will allow us to come on site, we will.
Can you give me like a good story or a memorable experience that kind of underscores the benefits of this approach?
I think, I had a patient who had some underlying chronic problems who had not been able to see a doctor since the pandemic started. And
Mhm.
as the years of the pandemic went on, his chronic issues just became worse. And I think there was a huge barrier for his family to get him out the house. He refused to leave the house. And so he hadn't seen anybody in like at least 3 years by the time I met him. And so once we came to the home and I introduced myself and the team introduced himself as well remotely over telemedicine, we were really able to stabilize all of the chronic conditions that he had going on and really started to just see an uptick in his energy level, natural joy started to come back in his life and get control of some of his chronic medical problems. And it was just a huge relief for family who had been seeing this kind of progressive decline, but kind of didn't know what
Mhm.
to do about it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think
Hmm.
that, I mean, I can think of a couple of patients of mine who would really benefit from an additional service like that. For instance, one lady had this bowel problem for several years and rarely leaves her home because she's just like unable to. And then she's always wanting home blood draws and things like that. And it's really hard for, I'm a brick and mortar, so like to coordinate these things for her. And then my brother recently, I guess, hired or whatever you want to say, got into a concierge model in his location because he struggles with blood draws too. And he went to Quest and he's like, I can't do this. So he ended up working with a concierge doctor and they helped him get his blood drawn. So I thought that that was nice for him too.
That's
But I
awesome.
mean, there's clearly a lot of great benefits. I don't know if you want to spell out any other benefits that we didn't go over or anything like that. Is there anything you can
Yeah,
think of?
I think the biggest benefits of this model is definitely more time. The visits are not rushed.
Mhm.
We really can delve into all of the issues that are on the table. I think more attention from not just the time of the visit, but beyond the visit. Something, if a question occurs, if you are
Mhm.
engaging with your family and they have questions, this model really does facilitate actually developing a full partnership with your doctor or provider, full relationship. It's an actual relationship in this model because both entities have to be on the same page about what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do this. And it's just a lot more personalized, I think. I think
Mhm.
this is really when we start tapping into the word of wellness in actual care. Like this is very high touch. And there are some people that they have a lot going on and they just need more. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just think sometimes big box medicine doesn't necessarily have the system in place to facilitate people who need more.
Yeah, it really doesn't. I mean, the biggest thing I think that you mentioned was access, but I thought, time is always a big one where I think more and more physicians are turning to the membership model because we just can't do that in a standard practice. And it's
Mhm.
unfortunate, but, the way that they reimburse us is not helpful to creating that long-term relationship where we can have more time and really get to know the patient. So it's very difficult, I think, is the way that medicine has changed, unfortunately. It doesn't have a great outlook, in my opinion. But what I liked about was something you said also. So personalized medicine, more time, clearly more
Mhm.
convenient, and then obviously increasing access for those who would be more in need of it as well. So, is there anything else on this topic you'd like to share with us today?
We are open and accepting new patients. So if people are, hearing this podcast and they're in the Central Florida region or the state of Florida and they think this would work for them or a loved one, they're more than welcome to book an appointment or a consultation with us. And we're happy to serve and help in any way that we can. But I do think this is revolutionizing healthcare. I think this is
Mhm.
definitely a model that will be a big part of the future of medicine in years to come.
Absolutely. Yeah. So give me your favorite health tips you like to share to your patients or anybody.
Sure. Yeah. So I always say my top three are one, sleep. I feel like, especially after sleep fellowship, I've become obsessed with sleep. I
I
can
think
do a
that's a trend. Yeah.
can do a whole talk, and there's a lot of gadgets out there, consumable devices, wearable devices about sleep. But I think the biggest thing is the quantity of sleep that people are getting. There's studies out there to say the average American probably gets under 6 hours. And so when you look at the bell curve of the National Science Foundation, really people should be getting closer to 7 to 8 as adults.
Mhm.
And so if you can get optimal sleep, 7 to 8 hours every night, that's a huge tip because it impacts your mood, your immunity, a lot of chronic issues. If you've got diabetes, heart issues, things like that, makes you a
Right.
lot nicer if you're me.
Same. Yeah.
So that's one, optimize your sleep. Two, we're here in Florida. It's been super hot. The summer's been brutal.
Mm.
So staying hydrated, making sure you're getting at least, 64 ounces of water daily is great. I like a water bottle because it's like a constant visual reminder that I should
Mhm.
be sipping to meet my goals. That's definitely, definitely huge. And then three, the digital detox. Like I'm a big person in believing that you should have a few minutes every day to walk away from technology. I'm not saying ban it. I'm not saying, X out technology from your life, but it does help to reduce your stress level. I think when you're not always on your phone or your computer or the TV, just give yourself some lack of screen time, 10 to 15 minutes a day. I think it goes a long way. And
Yeah.
so
Oh,
those are
those are
my
great. Yeah.
those
I
are my
think I
tips.
just as a add on to the hydration thing, a lot of our seniors sometimes don't feel thirsty. And I was having a conversation yesterday with the patient. And I'm like, you need to set that timer on your watch, or you need to, every time you get up or something, you need to have that water bottle or get one of the water bottles that you just, finish throughout the day, which I think would be really good because sometimes they're just, lightheaded every time they get up. And I'm like, well, the biggest thing is hydration. Are you drinking enough? So especially in the heat, like if they go work in the yard and then come back in, they really
Oh,
need
yeah,
to replenish. Yeah. So we see a lot
definitely.
of that too. And you are internal medicine, so you do not see children, right? Just to make sure.
Correct. I'm the
Okay.
18 and up crowd.
Okay. Great. And so where else can people find you and, learn about your website and hear about you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so we are across all the different social media channels. So they can find us on Instagram, House Concierge MD, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and we try to post tips weekly about different wellness and health topics. And then we engage with people if you leave comments. So definitely free to check us out on those sites as well. Hmm.
Awesome. We'll put all that in the show notes. And I just wanted to thank you for coming on the podcast today and, giving us your time. I really appreciate it. And good luck to you in your wonderful practice. And I hope we help you get some patients.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. I enjoyed my time with you guys. Have a great day.